Hello, good morning everyone. Welcome to Sunrise. It is this lovely Monday morning. I'm Chamberlain. So,
well, it's also a beautiful Monday morning from here in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well. What do we know? Making steps, progress is what everybody seeks. We are here globally, everywhere you go. So I think it's important for us to highlight this particular step which has been taken by Charles CV, that agreement that we signed with UNWTO.
Yeah.
And, more so this period where the cash cow, the overdependence on this cash cow is really affecting us. We've talked about diversifying the economy for decades. Over the weekend, even the President of the Senate alluded to that.
Yeah.
And so it's such that it's taking a hit. And so if we don't leverage on the potentials that we've got as a country and in Africa, of course, you don't need any soothsayer to let you know that you will feel the crunch at some point or the other. And so this agreement, because we do have, is a tourism-centric agreement. And so not just Nigeria, Africa has got huge tourism potential. And it comes at a time where if you look at some of the World Economic Forum reports, which did show that I think that tourism, the TNT industry contributed 2% to Nigeria's GDP compared to Seychelles, Cape Verde, Mauritius, some of these other countries that have 20, 17% in that order. And you thought, whoa, there's really a lot here that we could leverage on, strengthen and ensure that, yes, that aspect of the economy or the sector contributes to our economy. So you can imagine if everyone chips in, just like in football, some key players chip in their own goals. Yeah, it really will go a long way. So, way to go.
Absolutely. And, COVID had its impacts.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of impact on tourism. A lot of countries were doing quite well when it comes to tourism. And, looking at the figures from UNWTO, seeing the top earners, but this one's far back as 2018. 2020 definitely was a big hit. But you see that US tops the list with $215 billion. So imagine $215 billion, cool cash in the bag, or as they say in the account. So imagine, the effect of that on a country's economy, the GDP, followed by Spain, France, and the rest. Well, no country in Africa is on the top 10 just yet. But, when you come to Nigeria, and I'm saying this advisedly, we were in Kaduna recently, went to Abuja. In Abuja alone, just driving through Abuja, just make sure you're not the one driving, really. Ensure you're in the driver's seat so you can enjoy the scenery. I kept seeing amazing rocks. I saw this particular one that had vegetation on one side, and then it was rock on the other side, as though nature just decided to put a masterpiece right there. And it was in the city center. It was not even on the outskirts. And this is what you have around. And I'm not just talking Abuja alone. I'm talking Cross River, Akwa Ibom, Oyo State, Lagos. Oh, yes, Lagos. I can mention all states in Nigeria and the amazing tourism potential that they have. I know a lot of people have come back from summer. So you probably have made your plans and you're done with it already. But look around you. We talk about earning, forex for Nigeria and the rest. We can actually spend inside. From Kaduna to Abuja alone, yes, there's a challenge around security, which has been sorted out. But just imagine the potential. If all we can just get is $1 billion from tourism every year, that's huge.
I just recalled when we, decided to do this, I just recalled a document that I saw, I think 2018, 2019, that says that Africa is the next tourism destination of the world. Now, the AFDB has this high-five plan, and tourism is one of the core objectives, one of the core things that the AFDB is looking at for development of Africa. And I don't think we even understand the value of what we have and then place the requisite value on them. Let me just give you two instances. There is an artesian well. Very few artesian wells in the world. Artesian wells are where you draw water that you can drink and be healthy. It has all the natural minerals that you need to give you adequate immunity, and you don't even need to do anything, just bottle it as it is coming. It's coming from the earth, straight, very, very hot, full of minerals. 500 meters from under the earth and straight into a bottle to your table. No processing, nothing, and it doesn't get bad. I mean, you treat it well. Nigeria has that. There are only 2 suspended lakes in the world. Nigeria has 1 in Oyo State. And there are so many other things like that. And I'm just wondering, do we even know the value of what we have? I think that's where the problem is. And that's where I think this partnership is really important. Do we know the value of what we have? If we know the value of tourism to the world, tourism to those who travel, who love to travel, and who have what it takes to travel, go to Bonny Island. Go to Badagry. You mentioned virtually every state in this country has one thing or the other. Just go to Bonny Island. And they have, you know, beyond all the things that you're talking about, just look at their beaches. Go to Badagry. Treat these places well. If we know the value of what we have, Chamberlain, we will make so much money from tourism, we'll even ignore oil. But with this partnership, I hope we'll be able to do just one particular thing, and that is give requisite information out to people, and then we'll be able to harvest the profits therefore.
Well, we have to be ambitious and deliberate about
Absolutely.
this if we need to leverage on the potentials that this industry has got, and that means that so many things that we need to put in place if we need to maximize that. But in any case, let's bring you, just in case you missed it, here is it.
As the world celebrates the 2021 World Tourism Day with the theme Tourism for Inclusive Growth, it's an opportunity for 2 giants to collaborate, come together and fight or move the sector forward in Africa and the world. We see a coming together of Channels Media Group and the United Nations World Tourism Organization, represented by the chairman of Channels Media Group and the Secretary General of United Nations World Tourism Organization. They meet in Abidjan here in Côte d'Ivoire, the host for the 2021 World Tourism Day. It's now become known that every 5 years the event is hosted in an African country, and so for 2021 it's being hosted in Côte d'Ivoire. The relationship between Channels Television and the United Nations started in August 2015 when the media group first formalized its collaboration with the United Nations to promote its efforts and projects and enhance conversations around the Sustainable Development Goals. The relationship is formalized as they sign the dotted lines and agree, after discussing, of course, on terms that would guide the relationship between United Nations World Tourism Organization and Channels Media Group. And the essence of this is to foster development in the tourism sector.
And nice friendship, because again, African continent needs to be more known outside of and out of the continent, and we see a lot of potential to support African tourism, to develop African culture, and we are starting, and I'm sure that via channels we can communicate better with
This is like the icing on the cake for us, because I love tourism. I like to travel a lot. And then the fact that we have to reset the button for tourism around the world, in the sense that global tourism has taken a hit arising from the pandemic that happened last year. So you rest assured that you have a very good partner in us, Channels TV, and we'll do everything possible to make sure that your objectives are met, using us, as a channel to reach the world with your message. So,
thank you. I will add one more.
It's a new dawn as this relationship is set to broaden discussions when it comes to tourism sector and enhance the developmental efforts in the sector, not just in Africa, but in the world, and it will always be memorable because it's the 2021 World Tourism Day celebration. So reporting here from Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire, I'm E. John Mekwa for Channels Television News.
Well, the
Context to
statements
what?
of fact anyway.
Context to which one?
Wait, I didn't make this. Wait a minute, slow down. Slow down.
Because that fact by the finance minister, for instance, we're not hearing it for the first time. It's been repeated by governors.
Common knowledge.
The chairman of the Governors Forum said it a good number of times, that one of the things responsible for this insecurity is the rising poverty rate. It is clear, the blind can see it. So the question is, what are we doing about it? And that statement ascribed to the governor of CBN. Do you remember that, I think it was I'm not sure if it's the Works and Housing Minister that said, we need money in the region of trillions every year to bridge the infrastructure gap. So where are we going to get the trillions when we're hardly able to even balance our sheets at the end of each year to pump into infrastructure? So, well, as you said at the beginning, Chamberlain, we have to be hopeful.
Yeah, aggressive, ambitious, and put some measures in place if we really want to harness the potential that exists. And then just above this, you also find hush puppy. U.S. government gathers 2,700 electronic files, 6,700-page documentary evidence against Abba Kyari.
Oh, wow.
Yep, you heard.
6,000 pages.
6,700-page documentary evidence. Yeah. You know, you thought that the Ivory Tower is a very important, I mean, they should have a key role to play, given where we are in the country. But you get to see non-implementation of agreement, ASU to meet FG next week. So they are equally bedeviled by such a challenge. So we have got a job of work to do in this country to get ourselves close to where we want to. Let me not say where we want to, because you know you have to take those steps before you get to your target. So that's Tribune today.
Well, let's turn our attention to the Guardian newspaper for you and see what's making the rounds. You see, the big one is on revenue. Oil nears $80 with slim chances for more revenue due to theft. That's how the Guardian leads this morning. And take a look at the riders. Nigeria partly responsible for higher oil prices, yet can't break even. Despite amnesty, 32 billion naira security cost, average loss to crude theft, vandalism surpasses 200,000 barrels per day. I recall it was it earlier this month, the last month, that figures came out that we had dropped to what, 1.2? Yeah, I think about 1.2 million barrels per day. And you wonder, whew. Thankfully, well, oil was over $70 at that point, so it didn't quite make a huge difference. Operators can't make money, need newer security models. So that's another angle to our revenue generation challenge in the country this morning. I know some have said that, well, it's sometimes good to get this shocker from oil so we can focus on other things. I mean, the much touted diversification, hoping it can take a foothold eventually.
There's something Jimbalin said earlier about us putting the right infrastructure, well, infrastructure now being soft infrastructure in place to be able to get things right. One of those critical soft infrastructure will be the enabling environment for micro, small and medium enterprises to thrive. Then government can collect taxes, revenues and all of that from them. But a situation where...
And VAT.
I'll come back to that later.
You will?
Yes, I will. Oh, yes.
Tomorrow.
A situation where, you know, micro, small businesses cannot even survive their first 2-3 years. Where is government going to get their taxes from? And, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot that we have to grapple with.
Absolutely. And you can say that even for the front page of The Guardian, because there's this other story. I don't see problem with implementing anti-grazing law, says Fire Me. Nigeria's tax system problematic. Supreme Court to expedite action on VAT. So, I mean, The Guardian has said it for you. You don't need to talk
See,
it again.
I told you I'd come to it.
Country lacks funds to build economy, borrowing a necessity. I mean, another major conversation. And you see, governors need to manage finance responsibly. El Rufai, Akeredolu altercations on open grazing needless. So some of the highlights of Governor Fahimi's conversation. It's on page 2 of the newspaper. A couple of other stories. There's sports on the back page. Let me just take it. Joshua must beat Usyk in 2022 rematch or forget Fury. Wilder big purse fight. page 45. It was like a lot of Nigerians took the punch along with Anthony Joshua during that match. It's quite disappointing, but hey, that's what champions are made of.
One Nigerian journalist clearly said, with someone we all know, clearly said, look, guys, no sentiment here, Usyk is going to win. I was like...
The second one? The rematch? Or
No, this match, before the match. So, guys, forget it. No sentiment here, Usyk is going to win. I'm aware. Anyway, as we said here...
Is that anti-Nigeria?
The Vanguard newspaper is next, and it goes this way. 35.5 trillion naira debt, unsustainable, worrisome. That's ascribed to NECA. NECA is a body of employers, so they should know what they're talking about. The story is on page 5. And here, also talking about infrastructure, says, PPP approach, best way to address infrastructure deficits. Question then is, why are we looking this way? The details you may find on page 5. Adds government needs to review rising cost of governance and block leakages. The Auditor General's report to the rescue. And look at that chart. 98 companies, weather COVID-19 impact, post 6.1 trillion naira turnover. The details you find on the inside pages. And one of the writers, advertising, media, hospitality sector still in limbo. Uh-oh. The details you find on the inside pages. And right above the nameplate, PIA amendment, beg your pardon, PIA amendment proposal, Niger Delta reps to push for 5% equity share for host communities. The details you find on page 7. And there's this other one, there can be no peace without justice, equity. That's ascribed to the Vice President. And I told you I was coming back to the VAT issue. VAT, Nigeria's tax system, problematic, confusing. Governors subscribe to, you'll find the details of that on page 8 of the paper this morning. The back page has sports, and wow, what a punch. Anthony Joshua earns a whopping 8.4 billion naira despite title loss. I think I like that kind of loss.
So the rematch will make sense too, because he'll earn as well. Good earnings, good gates.
Wow. Tyson Fury would have destroyed AJ, says Warren. Find the details on the back page of the paper today. That's the Vanguard this morning. Good morning, Markwe.
Good morning, gentlemen. It's a good thing you guys find my village a good place for tourism. It's good to see that, you know, Channels is doing something in that regard and trying to promote tourism in the UNWTO. But let's take a look at what the Abuja Inquirer has for us on the front page this morning. COVID-19, UK issues new travel guidelines for Nigerians. There's been a lot of questions as to what should happen when Nigerians go to the UK, and there have been allegations of discrimination. So a lot of answers on the front page and inside the Abuja Inquirer for you this morning. COVID-19, UK issues new travel guidelines for Nigerians. I think it involves, you know, just having a very simple guideline. You see that your country is green or you're in the red list. I don't know about countries in amber, but you might want to read details on page 3 of the paper. They have a number of stories just beneath the nameplate, but let's look at this one. How 12-year-old boy drowned in Abuja River. Watch your wards this rainy season. That's from FEMA. Community moves to appease water spirit. That's also on the front page. Nigeria at 61. Nigeria needs God more than ever, says Wike. We know that this is the week where we celebrate Nigeria's independence. The first is on Friday, so a number of stories will be coming out ahead of that. It'll be interesting to see. We'll leave it there for the Abuja Inquirer.
Take a look at New Telegraph next here today and see what they lead with. Nationwide military presence. Police has failed in internal security. That's from a retired general. So you can see how that is highlighted there this morning. So it goes back to that question as to the kind of security architecture that we have, its functionality or otherwise. And then, if they fail, so what are we doing about it? I mean, that would be the natural question. And then you see, no, they're overwhelmed, says ex-DSS chief. What's the difference? And then you see, police keep mum. Bandits release 10 Bethel Baptist students, kill 15 in Sokoto joint military base. Nigeria's security architecture has failed under Buhari or Tom. And then you see several other stories relating to party politics and the like. So that is New Telegraph today.
Next up is Daily Trust. Still on security, terrorist attack military base in Sokoto, killed 15 personnel. Well, that's how Daily Trust leads this morning. Yes, that's there. You see 9 fleeing soldiers found in Nigerian village. District head swears with Quran over alleged involvement in banditry. Bandits regrouping in Issa Forests used camels to attack communities. That's according to locals. Camels, yes.
As slow as they are.
This is quite worrisome. And you recall there's this telecoms shutdown in even Sokoto as well, Zamfara and Katsina. You wonder just how effective these things have been. And you see 330,000 Nigerians seeking refuge in Chad, Niger, Cameroon. That's according to the federal government. There's a picture on the front page. Let me just tell you about it quickly. It shows Haitians trying to cross a river and just shows you the state of things right there. That's the Daily Trust for you.
The leadership newspaper this morning leads with a declaration of sorts. We can't build a nation with bigotry, nepotism that's ascribed to northern governors. Find the story on page 4 of the paper this morning, and it has a number of writers. Warn against defining people based on religion, tribe. Say demarketing Nigeria comes with great consequences. There is this one ascribed to the vice president. Vision of united country undefeated, says Osinbajo. Find the details on the inside pages. And this one on page 15, 6 northern states' economy under threat. And the picture of Governor Zulum is right there beside the story. Find the details right there on page 15 of the leadership newspaper this morning. That's the leadership today. Okay.
Excuse me. Daily Times, Hunger 76, Minority Reps Caucus flays claims in Buhari's speech, says speech didn't reflect Nigeria's true position. Insurgents have become emboldened under the president's what? So some criticism for the president's speech there. They also have this one, Nigeria will overcome its security, economic challenges. That's from Osinbajo and Adeboye and the SGF as well. They have a number of other stories. Yes, you'll be seeing lots of that ahead of Nigeria's 61st independence celebration. 10 more kidnapped Bethel Baptist school students regain freedom. That's also there. And a bit of business for you. CBN supports power, gas infrastructure with 424.14 billion naira. So hopefully we should see some improvements in electricity supply. Let's leave it there for the Daily Times.
Local News Direct today, they have something a little different from what we've seen previously. Forex defaulters, customers threaten banks over names publication. Wow, so what's that word they use? Well, I guess we'll watch this space and see what happens next about that. And you know, when the governors were warning about ethnicity and all of those things, you know, you'd have thought, okay, what solution do they proffer? Do we expect the governors, their team or their forum to come up with some suggestions saying, okay, you know what, here's what we'll propose. No more state of origin in certain things. No more. Those are the kind of steps you should take, having warned. So,
do you have any idea how many policies will have to go? One of them will be the federal character policy.
Well, not necessarily, though. Will it? As a result of this warning?
You know, we have a forest.
Well, whatever can bring development to the country, why not? You know, so there you go. That's a look at some of the dailies here this morning. Don't forget, we'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us. All right, so to shed light on some of those matters that have been raised, we'll go to Abuja. Markwe.
Thank you, Chamberlain. We have with us this morning Mr. Festus Okoye, who is the National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee at the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. And we also have with us Mr. Godson Okoye, who is the National Chairman of UDP and National Secretary Coalition for New Nigeria, and also a former presidential candidate of the UDP. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to our studios in Abuja.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. Good morning.
Shall we say that we are in interesting times? Just before we went, I don't know why I say we, as if I'm a member of the National Assembly. But before the National Assembly went on recess, they're back now. We saw the ruckus that, greeted some of the innovations which were about to be imputed into the Electoral Act. And that's something that is that's a vital, body of law that INEC needs to be able to function as it ought to. And in recent times, we've also seen INEC wade into this conversation by releasing their position paper on the matter. I read very carefully the preface of the INEC, the chairman of INEC, and he said that, their position paper was not to support or support or not support another party, for lack of a better phrase now. It was just to state the position of INEC, and he gave the paper gives a pretty comprehensive history of how far INEC has come in some of the innovations that he has come up with. I'm not going to come to you yet, Mr. Okoye. Let me ask Mr. Godson Okoye. Interestingly, you're both Mr. Okoye, so it's going to be...
Only that one is a chief.
Okay. So I'll say Chief Okoye then. Yeah. I don't know if you saw INEC's position paper. What was your reading when INEC said that, look, we've come up with a few innovations over the years and we think that we can actually support electronic transmission? Do you have a problem with it?
Well, thank you very much. Very, very good question. The issue of transmission is very, very key and very fundamental to credibility of any election. And run up to 2015 presidential election, it was a problem because the guideline of that was made in 2014 included the issue of transmission. But the problem they had then was, where do you transmit from? Is it from the polling unit? Or is it from the ward collation center? Or the local government collation center? Or the state collation center? Where do you transmit the result from? And then, how do you do the transmission? Is it via SMS? Or is it via internet? Or I think there's an improvement they made in Edo and the Kitty. I think they call it the Z-Pad or something. That worked somehow. If the results, because why the transmission is key is that the issue of manipulation takes place, local government, ward collation center, carrying the papers, you have issues. By the time you get to local government collation center, some figures will have changed. By the time you get to state, some figures will have changed. Therefore, if you have to transmit results, the transmission is very, very fine, and it should be there. And I think if INEC will use being satisfied in Section 49 of the Electoral Act, that the presiding officer, if he's satisfied that the person standing before him, that he should give him ballot paper to vote, that's satisfied. In quote, they've used it to bring in smart card reader. That's their major plank of argument. That being satisfied that the smart card reader will create that level of satisfaction. If they can use that to impute bringing in smart card reader, unlike Ghana that has similar provision, but says if the presiding officer is satisfied that the person standing before him, his name is in the register and this is the right person, he will go through biometric verification. That's another subsection. Therefore, I think what INEC should have done would be to look at the Ghana model and work for an amendment. They've amended some other sections of the Constitution. But that's in fact bearing in mind that a number of elections at the tribunal level were invalidated because they said the smart card reader is a machine that is unknown to law. Some people lost election, and some that relied on it to make their case lost. There are a plethora of cases, and even at the Supreme Court level. But that's for another. So if they could use that word, satisfied, to bring in smart card reader, they should also use the provision of Section 71 of the December Electoral Act that talks about a website posting the result on their website, their notice board, and website. So for them to have written website there, it means something has been transmitted to it. Section, if you read Section 49, Section 65, 71, and 74, it gives you that because 74 gives INEC the authority to make guidelines for election. And in that guideline, you're going to include how to upload or transmit the results. So, and they mention posting.
I'm trying to get a summary of what of your argument right now. You're saying electronic transmission is welcome.
Yes.
However, there needs to be some
clarification.
Correct. And some inclusion.
Some inclusion, yes.
Yes, you've made a few suggestions to that.
Because for you to have that kind of, you're going to have electronic database.
Yes.
And people will be able to, verification will also be done electronically.
Okay,
therefore, for you to transmit.
Yes.
But it's there already in the law. That's what I'm saying. If they could use one word to bring smart card reader, they should use the effect of Section 71 and 74 to bring in the issue of transmission. So there's even no need going to National Assembly to seek for permission, or this one they are saying go to NTC and all that. It's not necessary.
Okay, so let me ask you, Mr. Okoye, how has this position paper been received?
Well, it's been well received. Our position is that some of the arguments that have been put forward in relation to the issue of transmission of election results excluded the Independent National Electoral Commission. Our views have not been sought. We've not been asked to come and substantiate some of the issues we put forward in relation to our capacity and capability to transmit election results. So what the Commission has done is to join the debate because it's a national conversation. We didn't want other people to drive our own narratives and put forward our own perspectives. So what we have done is to put forward where we stand in relation to the issue of transmission of election results.
I'm smiling because when you say that what the Commission has done is to join the debate, is to have its head refuse to be shaved behind its back.
Exactly.
It's very interesting, and you say that you've had a pretty good reception.
Yes.
From what kind of stakeholders has this finally hit the floor of the National Assembly, where we saw the loudest debate, or an opportunity for, how will I put it now, for Nigerians, because they're supposed to be representing Nigerians, right? So where we saw the biggest debate, even where, at some point there was almost fisticuffs being thrown. Yeah, or it came to fisticuffs. I'm just wondering how it has been received there.
Well, we've just released the position paper.
Yeah.
We are going to make copies available to all members of the National Assembly. We are also going to make sure that the members of the Harmonization Committee get a copy of this particular position paper because it's going to clarify a lot of things for them. One, there is no doubt whatsoever. I don't think there's any debate relating to the powers of the Independent National Electoral Commission. This commission is creation of the Constitution. The National Assembly is a creation of the Constitution. The Executive is a creation of the Constitution. The Independent National Electoral Commission derives the bulk of its powers from the Constitution. If you look at Section 78 and Section 118 of the Constitution, as well as the third schedule to the Constitution, it clearly defines and adumbrates the powers of the Commission in relation to organizing elections, undertaking elections, and supervising elections, and also engaging in voters' registration. So there's no doubt whatsoever in relation to some of these powers. Now, our contention is that nobody can dilute or take away the powers of the Independent National Electoral Commission in relation to some of these issues I have enumerated without altering the provisions of the Constitution. So what is in issue has nothing to do with the powers of the Commission. Now, the NCC is not a body created by the Constitution. The Independent National Electoral Commission is a body created by the Constitution. Section 160 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says that the Independent National Electoral Commission can impose duties on the NCC. In other words, we can ask NCC to go and do A, B, and C constitutionally. But the NCC cannot ask the Independent National Electoral Commission to organize elections, undertake elections, or supervise elections. So we are the ones who can impose duties on them and not the other way around. But what we have done is that we have engaged in strategic partnership with all agencies of government we believe have a role to play in the electoral process. And that was why in 2018, we went into some form of partnership with them in relation to the issue of transmission of election results. And if you look at that particular document, we've inputted the provisions of the memorandum of understanding we have with them. We've inputted the conclusions arrived at after our meetings with them. And the conclusion was that 93% of all the polling units of the Independent National Electoral Commission, as of 2018, were covered by the major networks. And we also had a meeting. In that meeting, all the major network providers, mobile network providers, were in that particular meeting. So what we are saying is that this is our own position. You cannot take away the powers of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Now, I think that, let me make this clear. The issue, as far as the commission is concerned, is not even the issue of transmission of election results, because Section 52 of the Electoral Act gives the Independent National Electoral Commission the power to determine the mode of elections. So, in relation to determining the mode of elections, we can even introduce electronic voting machines. There's no doubt about that. In terms of a transmission of election results, we can transmit. The issue revolves around the provisions of the Electoral Act that prescribes the step-by-step procedure for the collation of results. And the step-by-step procedure for the collation of results adumbrated in the Electoral Act is manual. And it says that if election ends now, that what the presiding officer should do is to sort out the votes, then count the votes, and then enter the scores of the candidates or the political parties into a form. And he will sign that particular form. The polling agents or party agents, if available, will also sign, and copies will be given to them and to the security agencies. And then he will now pack up and then go to the next level of collation, which is the RA Collation Center, where the same results will be entered into from EC8B and also collected manually. It is that collation manually that is the challenge. In other words, even if we transmit election results, we cannot use that election results for purposes of collation. And if you can't use transmitted results for purposes of collation, the implication is that it is of no legal efficacy, it's of no legal value. In fact, it is really impotent. So that's what the issue is. So we want a situation where those impediments in the Electoral Act that makes collation of results manual to be removed, so that we can collate electronically and also announce results electronically. That's what we are saying.
Yeah, also part of the Electoral Act now, which also forbids INEC from using electronic voting. It expressly says that provided it is not done electronically. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. No. You see, what people do not know was that just at the twilight of the exit of President Jonathan from power, he signed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2015, which re-engineered Section 52 of the Electoral Act, which prohibits the use of electronic voting machines for any reason whatsoever. That particular provision has been removed and replaced with the provision that says that the conduct of elections shall be at the discretion of the Independent National Electoral Commission, that we should be in a position to determine the mode for the conduct of elections. So the operative provision as of today is the one that gives the Independent National Electoral Commission the power, the discretion to determine the mode of elections and the way we want to conduct elections.
That's interesting, sir. Let me quickly send this to my colleagues in Lagos.
Well, thank you, Mokwe. Mr. Okoye, speak to the position that Chief Okoye gave the other time about the the fact that Section 71 of the Electoral Act already gave INEC powers to do whatever it judges best concerning the elections. Of course, you have also quoted that one in Section 52 or thereabout. How do you react to that? I mean, talking about this transmission of results and posting of election results, about that Section 71, is it before the election? Is it during the elections that the results will be posted there, or after the elections?
Now, the issue of posting results in our website is neither here nor there. Whatever you post on the website is of no legal consequence, is of no constitutional consequence, and is of no efficacy. What is efficacious are the results that are collated, both at the polling unit, at the registration area collation center, at the local government collation center, at the state collation center, and at the national collation center. Those are the results that are valid. Those are the results that are used for electoral litigation. Whatever you post on the website, you cannot use it for purposes of litigation. And you cannot also use it for purposes of announcing election results, because election results are not announced on the website. The Electoral Act has set out what we call a step-by-step procedure for the collation of election results. After the polling unit results are collated into Form EC8A, you now move it to the registration area collation center, where the results are also collated and entered into Form EC8B and signed by the collation officer and countersigned by the polling agents if available, and given to the political parties. Then it moves from there to the local government collation center, where the collation officer also collates the results into Form EC8C, and then it moves up to the national level, depending on the type of election we are talking about. Those are the ones, those are the results that are used for announcing the winners of election. Those are the results that, the figures that are used by the returning officers to make announcement. The returning officer will not have opportunity of looking at the website and using it for the purposes of announcing election results. Therefore, unless you remove those legal impediments, unless you recalibrate those sections of the Electoral Act that gives that makes our elections manual, you cannot use transmitted results for the purposes of declaring the winner in any election. Because when you go to court, it is those forms that you are going to tender in court as a means of proving who has won and who has not won. You cannot go to the website and go and begin to look for results that have been posted. Moreover, if you look at the results we posted through IREV.
Well, my apologies. Just to be clear, because I was wondering, so if INEC already had all the powers it needed to do what it needs to do, why then do we need to make the amendments? I think you have just, made those clear now. So essentially, all of these arguments about amending the laws and all of that is just to ensure that the manual components of election transmission is removed, correct?
Exactly. That's the point. That's the point. We are saying that the law, both the Constitution and the Electoral Act, already gives the Commission the power to transmit election results. But the issue is that those results that are transmitted are of no constitutional value. They are of no electoral value. The only time it will have value is if you remove those impediments in section 53 and 57 of the Electoral Act, and make our elections both manual and electronic, so that when there's a dispute between manually collated results and electronically collated results, we will do some level of verification and use one of them. But as of today, you can only collect results manually. And if you attempt to use electronic means to collect results, it becomes valueless and of no consequence. So it is those sections that makes our elections completely manual that we are saying should be removed, so that we can transmit elections electronically and use them for the purposes of collation and announcement of election results.
Because if after manually entering those results in all those forms, you cannot maybe snap it and send it somewhere. Is that going to be deemed electronic as well?
That's exactly what we are doing at the moment. When at the level of the polling units, when results are entered into from EC8A, it is also entered into from EC60E and posted at the level of the polling unit. That is what we use the ZPad to snap and then transmit into our INEC result viewing portal. But we do not collate what we transmit into that result viewing portal because collation has already been, the procedure and how collation should be done has already been set out in the law. So you cannot use the results in IREV because it's not collated for the purposes of electoral litigation. And that is the issue relating to Section 49 of the Electoral Act, which my colleague alluded to. The Supreme Court affirmed the efficacy, the veracity, and the importance of the smart card reader in terms of using it for the purposes of identifying who is a registered voter and who is not a registered voter. The Supreme Court affirmed the fact that the smart card reader can prevent identity theft, and they applauded the Independent National Electoral Commission for introducing it. But what is in issue, and what was in issue in the Supreme Court, is whether the data from the smart card reader can be used for the purposes of determining overvoting. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't use the data from the smart card reader to determine overvoting without amending Section 49 of the Electoral Act, because that the base of our electoral process is the voters register, and that if you want to determine overvoting, you must go to the voters register, which is the base of the electoral system. And that was what the Supreme Court determined.
You know, it almost sounds to me as though we're conducting our elections primarily with litigation in mind, not with transparency in mind. If we say that, I mean, eventually it will be thrown out in court. And I think that's counterproductive. So, I mean, it's no wonder we see the courts time and again having to, interfere and sort, party issues. I'll come back to you in a moment, but let me take this back to Chief Okoye, as we call him on the show, and just, get real life instances of how, this process has perhaps affected the chances of his party in elections, because I think that's what's most important, seeing how this has worked and what the current provisions, which is being debated or which is controversial, will work if eventually it is passed into law. So, Chief Okoye, we have a minute to go to break. If you could just give an insight, then we'll continue when we return from this break. So please go ahead.
Just unnecessary splitting of hairs. This is not necessary. All this collation here, collation there, collation there. At a point, somebody is doing the collation. And at that point, you are doing the collation. You are an official of the INEC. You should be able to say, okay, I authenticate this result, and then it's posted to the national portal. Why all this local government, the world, local government, state, and all? And that's where we have issues. At the level of the world, you should be able to say, yes, I've collected this, and this is authentic. And it goes to the portal. And once that is done, and if sending it to the portal is not there, what's website doing in Section 71 of the Electoral Act? What's the purpose of the website? If you say website, then there is supposed to be a transmission of something to that website. It is just that I don't think INEC is really looking at the procedure from the outside. I think they're just looking at it from the inside. That's the issue I think they have, that you must go through this procedure, you must sign this, you must sign that. Somebody can also sign and transmit it electronically. I say, I authenticate this, I sign it. It's not a big deal. It's not rocket science. For me, what's going to National Assembly to clear up this is unnecessary. It's a waste of time and a waste of resources, because the law already allows them to do that. But the other side, the flip side, where he's talking about procedure, the procedure for election is different from the method of election. They are different things. So I really don't think that what the former president signed removes the issue of electronic voting. I don't think so. I think that amendment may be tested in court, because I think the language of that section is the procedure, that INEC has procedure, not the method. They are all different. But that's for another day. Anyway, but what we are saying, the system of collation can be authenticated at every point. And it can be used for purposes of litigation. But like you said, our elections should not be for purposes of litigation. It should be for purposes of something that is transparent. You should be able to sign a result and say, Presiding Officer A, I signed this, or Collation Officer A at this local government, I signed it.
But the question will be, yeah, Chief Okoye,
check what is written from what is transmitted.
You know, Chief Okoye, the challenge now will then be, can you make it transparent without sticking with the provisions of the law? But we'll get your responses when we return in a moment. Don't go away. Well, Mr. Okoye, I would like you to respond to some of the issues that Chief Okoye has raised, saying that he just thinks that, no, Mr. Okoye now, not Chief Okoye, that INEC can actually do much more than you're doing at the moment, because they feel, look, it's INEC hiding behind certain things, not wanting to do a lot more.
No. This particular commission is a very, very courageous commission. And this particular commission has been very, very innovative. And we've been a leader in terms of trying to use technology for purposes of improving the electoral process. I think that let us get things clear. One, if you look at our electoral framework, you will see that there's the Constitution, there's also the Electoral Act. Both the Constitution and the Electoral Act gives the Independent National Electoral Commission the power to also issue regulation, make regulations, issue guidelines, and also make gazettes. Now, at the level of the polling unit, because I need us to get this in clear, the Electoral Act says that collation of results at the level of the polling unit should be done manually, and that these results should be entered into a form, and mandates the Independent National Electoral Commission to prescribe the form that will be used for the purposes of that particular election. Now, the Independent National Electoral Commission designed what we call Form EC8A, which every political party has. And that Form EC8A is known to everybody. On the day of the election, the presiding officer goes to the polling unit with that Form EC8A. So the moment elections are over, the presiding officer pulls out the Form EC8A, shows everybody for purposes of transparency, and then enters the scores of the political parties into that particular form, and then signs and stamps the form, and then asks the agents of the political parties present to also sign the form. Thereafter, he gives a copy to agents of the political parties that are present and also the security agencies for purposes of transparency, and then packs up those results and then goes to the registration area collation center and hands over to the registration area collation officer, who also does the same thing, enters into Form EC8B, which the political parties have, which the political parties know, which has been made available to every political party, which everybody knows, and we use them for purposes of training our officers. And that is the law. So what he is saying is that we should breach the provisions of the law by engaging in a different method of transmission. But what the commission has done is that we have our collation support and verification officers at the level of the collation centers. They also use spreadsheet to enter some of these results that are being collected, so that manual mistakes will be obviated. But at the end of the day, it is the manual one that is used for the purposes of announcing the scores of the candidates and also for making returns, because that is what the law says. So what we are saying is that if you want us to use transmitted results for the purposes of collation of results, remove those impediments in the law to enable us to do that. But whether we have the capacity, whether we have the virus to transmit election results, we are already uploading polling unit results into our INEC result viewing portal. But those things we are uploading are not collated results and cannot be used for announcing the winner of any election. So that's just the point.
Clear now. In terms of collation, I mean, you say the law says manual collation, and looking at the definition of collation,
yes,
on INEC's website, collation essentially is the tabulation or summation of votes cast in an election. So to what extent really is that collation all manual? I mean, if you're tabulating, if you're using a spreadsheet, at some point, would you have to use calculators? I mean, isn't that electronic? So to what extent really is collation really manual?
Well, the spreadsheet you are talking about is not from EC8A, neither is it from EC8B, neither is it from EC8C. That spreadsheet does not have a provision where the especially, let us look at it at the level of the polling unit. If you go to the level of the polling unit, you do not have some of these support mechanisms we have at the level of the RA collation and at the level of the local government collation and the state and the state collation. At the level of the polling unit, you just have the presiding officer and you just have the polling agents and the security officers and the voters. We do not do spreadsheet at the level of the polling unit. Neither do we do. We don't do spreadsheet at the level of the polling unit. We only do it at the level of the RA and at the level of the local government. So the point I'm making is that these forms are already known. These forms are already gazetted. These forms have received judicial interpretation in court on what is from EC8A, what is from EC8B, and what is from EC8C, and how these forms are generated and where these forms come from. So for us to change that methodology, we need to amend the provisions of the law.
I understand the point about from EC8A. I'm just saying, I mean, you've referenced the fact that INEC is very innovative, and we've seen, some of those, innovations time and again, and a lot of people will say, I mean, good job, INEC. But I'm just saying that even in the context of the manual collation, even at the polling unit, calculators are used, mobile phones are used to tabulate or add those figures. So it's not all manual. There's still some form of electronic going on, even at that level of collation, which is essentially meant to be all manual. So I'm saying that if you can find a way around that, it's only a matter of more innovation on the path of INEC to at least test those areas.
We will continue to innovate, but we will not innovate outside the provisions of the law. We will not willfully and maliciously breach the provisions of the Constitution and the law just because we want to innovate. When we realize that there's a challenge with the law, when we realize that there's a challenge with the Constitution, we approach those who have been given the constitutional mandate and the constitutional virus to amend the law or alter the provisions of the Constitution, draw their attention to it, seek the support of the Nigerian public, and then present it to them and see whether they will go to the same direction that the Commission wants to go. But you see, we've been looking for ways and means of making our elections more transparent, more robust, and we've been introducing a lot of technology in the electoral process. And that is why this debate is going on now. And we believe that the Nigerian people are with us in relation to what we want to do and also in relation to the greater introduction of technology in the electoral process. But we will continue to innovate. But
just shed some more light on this, Mr. Okoye. So are you then saying that the processes where you use calculator in the polling unit and the spreadsheets, which are elements of electronic procedures, they do not invalidate that manual process, because those are components of electronic materials in that so-called manual collation process? Because spreadsheet, using SPSS, those are electronic pieces.
No, these are what we call assistive devices. The calculator assists the presiding officer calculate well. And after calculating, the presiding officer enters it into that particular form. The spreadsheet enables everybody at the level of the RA collation center to see what is going on. If there's a mistake in terms of the calculations, it will be pointed out. But ultimately, the collation officer returns and does manual and enters even those results that you see in the spreadsheet into the manual from EC8B. So what we are saying is, give us the power. Just retouch sections 53 and 57 and 59 of the Electoral Act, if you can even make it a duality that we can use electronic means or use manual means, or even or both of them in order to cross-check. If you make it that way, it will now give the commission the power and the leeway to make a determination on which one is best or which one is better in the circumstances. So we are not saying that we don't have the courage to do this. We are saying remove this impediment. Let us do what will improve the transparency of the electoral process. So the politicians who are here, including Godson Okoye, what they should do is to go back to the National Assembly, impress on the National Assembly the desirability of removing those impediments so that we can bring more transparency to the electoral process. That's what we are saying. We are not saying that we cannot do it. We are saying we can do it, but remove this impediment. And they are refusing to remove the impediment and saying we should breach the law in order to be innovative. And we are saying we won't do that.
Just a couple of things here before we go to Chief Godson Okoye. Would it be out of place if INEC were to say, well, look, since we already use this electronic component in this manual collation, which is the calculator and the spreadsheet, because without that there'll be errors in that manual collation, why can't they then take it a little further in that assisting devices and then say, look, this is just the way we have to go to make it a lot easier by maybe you snap them and then send them or put them in USB and then send them so on, because you're already taking advantage of those electronic components in the way you say is assisting devices. If you argue based on that, because if you've used those methods and they didn't invalidate the result, why can't you take it a step further rather than wait for the politician? Because it is INEC that is the one doing that process.
Well, we are taking it further. That is why all this debate is raging in the country today. When we introduce the smart card reader, you can see the storm that accompanied the introduction of the smart card reader. And the Supreme Court had to even step in to intervene in relation to what we are doing. When we introduced the IREV, our INEC Resolve Viewing Portal, we didn't make reference to anybody. It has brought some level of transparency to the electoral process. And if you look at the 27 elections we've conducted since we introduced IREV, you can see that none of them has been invalidated on account of the processes and procedures of the commission. Rather, they are talking about their nomination processes and so on and so forth. So we've been looking for ways around it. But what we are saying is, why not remove these impediments so that we can bring more transparency and organize an election that everybody should be proud of? So what is the issue? Why are we splitting here over this issue? The commission is saying we can do this, we can do that, but this is the problem. Remove this problem. And people are refusing to remove the problem and saying no, INEC should breach the law, violate the law, it doesn't matter. Those who have members in the National Assembly should go and impress on their members in the National Assembly to remove the impediment, that we no longer want to do manual collation of results, that we want to do electronic collation of results. Let them remove the impediment so that we can do what we want to do. And they're saying no, they will remove it because what they want to do is they want us to find a way around it, and then they go to court and nullify whatever we have done and then waste the taxpayers' money. No, we want them to remove it now before we go to the 2023 general election, and then we will do what is right.
Just to be clear, Mr. Okoye, the sections, what section specifically are you talking about here?
I think section 53 of the Electoral Act. I'm not completely sure now. I think 53 and 57 of the Electoral Act. It sets out the step-by-step procedure for the collation of election results. It says that the moment elections are over,
we'll come to it, Mr. Okoye. Mr. Okoye, we'll come to it. Let me also ask Chief Okoye this same question. Now, you have listened to Mr. Okoye, and I'm pretty sure you are bubbling to, express some things about some of the things that you have heard. Do you think, from our experience, given that at the end of almost every election, there is a lot of adjudication about whether things have gone the way they ought to go or things haven't gone the way to go, the way they ought to go, and the judiciary has more often than not had taken the cake, so to speak. And so it's not only the ballot papers now, it's the judiciary That's what Mr. Okoye thinks we should eliminate. Let the ballots speak and not the judiciary. How do you react to that?
Well, it's very interesting that we're talking about obeying the law and all that. You don't want to break the law. Nobody is saying they should break the law to start with, but you obey the law. Court of Appeal gave a judgment. The 5 judges of the Court of Appeal, I'm not talking about majority judgment, and INEC said they will not obey it. That court is not an order, it's a judgment of the second highest court in the land. INEC said they will not obey it. There is no stay of execution. That judgment has not been set aside, but they said they will not obey it. And then we are talking about obeying the law or not wanting to break the law. What law? In the final analysis, it's actually the courts that decide what the laws are. It's not even whether INEC said it or whether the legislator said it, because even if the legislator can say it, it can be challenged in the court. And the law can be set aside, whatever the law is. But the point is, like we have said so many times, all this multiplicity of collations is either we are not defining properly what collation is, or we are not defining properly what transmission is. Because I've been listening to him, he's been going around the whole thing, and it doesn't seem to make sense to anybody. If INEC deployed a website that they are using, nobody is challenging their website. Nobody has challenged it. They say they have a viewing center and they transmit result there. They have a portal for that. Nobody has challenged it. So what's wrong in saying at the level of the local government, this is the manual from 8CA or 8CB, we own it. We are transmitting what is in this form to our website. We also own the website. What's wrong with that? Why don't they have the courage to do that? We own this system. We are saying
on the face value, I mean, on the face value, there should be nothing wrong with it. But the way, our electoral process has gone, we've seen that oftentimes it's like people are just waiting for a law to be passed. They look for the snags in that law, and then they go to court with it.
There's no doubt about that.
So what is wrong with what he is proposing, that whatever snags we have noticed or whatever we think could be a potential snag, let's take it out so that nobody is setting booby traps for us.
If you say that INEC is the institution that is guilty of that, Section 225 of the Constitution has been there. They now sought the INEC, they went to National Assembly and they got it amended.
You mean that INEC is setting booby traps for
INEC,
itself?
in fact, causes most of the confusion in the electoral process because they are very, very fixated on what they want. You don't listen to people that are practitioners. You say your own, and most of what you say are theories.
Can you give an example?
But I'm just giving you an example. There's Section 225 of the Constitution, which they got the National Assembly to amend, and put 225A, that they have the power to deregister parties, which has never been there. They've tried it severally, and the court said you cannot deregister party because an association. You go against the Constitution of the provisions of fundamental rights to associate. Now they got to him to do it. Now, haven't done that. The Court of Appeal said, yes, you have the power to deregister parties, but there is due process. It's like saying a police has a right to arrest a criminal. But having arrested the criminal, you bring him to the police station and you shoot him. That's not the law. You take him to court, prove his guilt, and the sentence. Even when he's sentenced, hold on, let me finish. You still don't execute him until the day the court says he will be executed by this formula, so and so date. Because he may have right of appeal. Let him exhaust the appeal. And Court of Appeal said, you have not applied due process. Therefore, what you did is void. And INEC is telling us about obeying the law. What law, for goodness sake? Where is the law?
It's an interesting thing.
No, that's one part of it. But in what we are saying, this collation thing,
yes.
Assuming, for instance, in a governorship election,
yes.
At the point of local government, you have INEC officials there. If you have, for instance, 10 local governments in the state, at the local government collation office, you should be able to know what the results are in every other ward in that local government. And at that point, you transmit it to the state level and say, these are the results from A, B, C, D, E, F local governments. And you authenticate it and say you own it. Even if an action is filed based on that, yes, this is physical from ATA, but this is also the one we have transmitted. We transmitted this, we own this.
We've seen how...
Why do you have to amend it?
We've seen how... Let me let Mr. Okoye, but we've seen how INEC has been... how will I put it now? How INEC has been hampered oftentimes with different results. But you've heard his
produced by who?
Yes. First one about there. I'd like you to react to one, the one about deregistering political parties, because he says that the Court of Appeal has told INEC that it did not follow due process, yet INEC hasn't done anything about that. They have continued to, ignore the ruling of the Court of Appeal. And then you also intervene.
They will obey the judgment. And they're telling me about obey what law?
Let me say this. Section 63 and Section 65 of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended prescribes manual collation and transmission of results. We are saying that for us to transmit and collate electronically, that the National Assembly should remove the impediment in Section 63 and 65 of the Electoral Act.
That is heard.
Yes, I read that one. Now, on the issue of Section 225A, Section 225A is a constitutional provision which allows the Independent National Electoral Commission to deregister political parties that are not viable anymore. Viable in the sense of either no longer maintaining a registered office in the Federal Capital Territory, or not viable in the sense of not winning anything whatsoever in relation to presidential election, governorship election, and every other election that is conducted by the Independent National Electoral Commission. And the Commission has exercised its powers to deregister political parties. Some of the political parties went to court. Court gave the Commission judgment in some of them. The court ruled against the Commission in some of them. And all these matters are before the Supreme Court as of today. So for me and for the Commission, the matter is sub judice. Let the Supreme Court make a final pronouncement in relation to this particular matter. I'm a very, very senior lawyer. I've been a lawyer for over 36 years, and I will not be on television arguing about a matter that has already been submitted for the adjudicatory powers of the Supreme Court. I will not do that. And he understands what I'm...
Did you get a stay of execution, though? Because the fact that a matter is before a court of superior jurisdiction doesn't mean that what has been ruled upon by the lower court should not be obeyed.
It's not in all matters that you go and ask for a stay of execution. There are levels of stay. There are matters that you cannot, if there are declaratory orders and so on and so forth, you do not go and seek for a stay of execution. But as I say, I will not sit here and argue about a matter that is already in the Supreme Court. He knows
we
that
are not discussing the merits. We are mentioning the matter. Nobody is going to the merits of the case. I'm also more than 35 years at the bar. So we're not discussing the merits of this case. So what we are saying is this is a case, it has a suit number, you can verify it. There is no stay, it has not been set aside, and you tell the world you cannot obey it, and you're telling me about obeying the laws. What laws? What are we talking? This is unnecessary double standard. Okay. But for goodness, for the purpose of what we're saying, hold on. What we are even talking about this section 61 and 65 is not even what.
Chief Okoye, let him quickly finish his thoughts on that, please.
No, I've said it. I'm a very senior member of the bar. I will not.
And so am I. And so am I. I'm a very senior member of the bar too.
I will not sit here and begin to argue over a matter.
Are you not just running away from
No, I'm not. He knows.
Yeah.
He knows that if the issue we are discussing today relates to the issue of the registration of political parties, it will be a different ballgame.
No, you said about obeying the law. You are talking about obeying. You pick and choose the laws you want to obey. It's not right. If you want to obey the laws, obey the laws.
Chief Okoye, there's no need to get worked up.
No. He feels he can shout. I have a voice to shout. But I'm just saying,
he represents
an institution.
He is not
that disobeys the law.
Just a moment.
He is the face of the institution.
Would you let me speak?
He is the face of the institution.
Chief Okoye,
they disobey the laws, and he encourages them to do that.
We require decorum here, please,
Thank you very much.
Everybody can follow the conversation. He is representing INEC, I agreed, but he's not the entire institution. However, I would just like you to, say what you know about it. You said it's before the Supreme Court. In this matter, is it important that INEC gets a stay of execution, or you don't think it is important?
Well, I came here to discuss issues relating to electronic transmission of results, and also discuss other issues relating to our processes and procedures. On this issue of the registered political parties, whether they were properly registered,
not the merit. Sorry.
No. Yes. I have discussed and discussed and discussed these issues.
That's not the issue I'm asking. I'm only asking whether you think it is important to get a stay of execution. We're almost out of time. That's what I'm asking you.
I really don't know unless I look at the files once again. I've not in the last 6 months or so. I've not looked at the files relating to the registered political parties.
The point he's trying to make is that INEC picks and chooses what laws it wants to obey and what laws it
all the judgments in Anambra State have they been decided in the Supreme Court? Which ones are you obeying and which ones are not obeying?
We're about to finish this, please. That's the point he's making.
We don't pick and choose which judgment we want to obey. This commission is known as a commission that respects the rule of law and due process, and we will continue to do that. You can see I understand his anger, I understand his frustration because his party was one of those we deregistered. But what we are saying is that you can remain a political association, but the moment you want to become a political party, you must be ready to bid for election, you must be ready to contest elections, and the moment you force off the radar, we take you out of the radar.
So quickly, what are you using to conduct the Anambra elections? What method, what mode are you using? Is it what you used in Edo or electronic transmission?
We are going to, use ballot papers. Registered voters are going to go to the polling units and they will be given ballot papers and they're going to use ballot papers to cast the results. We're also going to use the beavers for purposes of fingerprint verification and also for purposes of facial verification. We're also going to use the IREV for purposes of uploading from EC8A into our INEC result VM portal. And we are going to track all the election materials that will be used for the purposes of the conduct of Anambra elections. And we are moving very, very fast. And we believe that with what we have put in place and what we are doing, that Anambra will be a good election.
Well, gentlemen, on this note, I have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Edit this morning. Festus Okoye is the National Commissioner, Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee at INEC, and Godson Okoye is the National Chairman of UDP, National Secretary Coalition for New Nigeria, and former presidential candidate of the UDP as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to our studios this morning. Well, that's it for this segment. We'll take a break and we'll be back shortly with another matter. Please do not go away.
Welcome back. Well, we've got Dr. Adetokunbo Pierce, who joins us here in our studios in Lagos. He is a former Director General, Jonathan Sambo, Lagos Independent Presidential Campaign Organization for 2015. He also holds many caps within the party. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, let's start off by getting your thoughts on the conversation that just occurred with the previous segment, listening to both parties making their case from the points of law and political parties. I imagine some of those might have tickled your fancy, especially being an English scholar, lecturer yourself.
Well, the debate today between the two gentlemen made it clearer to me where the problem really is. I think that some politicians who are in the National Assembly now have benefited from the confusion that we have in our electoral system. But the Chief Okoye, who is from a rather smaller party and has been a victim of this convoluted system, understands what really needs to be done, which is to simplify the process. If INEC has control over every level of the voting and collation, then there should be no reason why results from the ward, which is really where the election has taken place. Election has not taken place anywhere else except in the ward, the voting polls. From there, the results should be transmitted directly to the final destination. Simple as that. And that's the end of the result. By the way, that's the way it's done in the US. At least I know that system. And by the way, you know, in this country, over the years, we've watched Ghana grow. Ghana changed so many things about its elections. And we should follow suit. Changes laws that do not work for the community, for the population. So the results should be tabulated from the ward. As people vote, the results should go straight electronically to its final destination. That's what I think. Whatever we need to do, whatever laws we have to put in place to make this happen, we must do it so that we can have real results that are free of manipulation.
Do you think the political class, especially members of the National Assembly, who came into power through this same process that we're talking about, do you think they have a misunderstanding of the situation on ground, or, you know, what you have described now? Do you think there is a misunderstanding, or that the whole thing is just deliberate, we like it the way it is?
I think it's probably both. In some cases, I hate to believe that all of them in the National Assembly are crooked, because it is only a crooked politician that will enjoy or approve of the way we run things now. So I think that we should continue with the conversation. You know, it's not enough to say that the members of the National Assembly benefit from corrupt practices and they're there, they won't change it. We must make them change. We must continue to talk about this. We will continue to insist. And the media has been doing a fantastic job promoting these views about a better governance.
You know, it's interesting that, you know, during the debate along these lines in the National Assembly, both chambers of the House, it would seem that to a large extent there is a perception that a good number of the decisions taken along this line were along party lines. Do you think the political parties themselves should have a conference on this matter so that there is a better understanding in the interest of the nation, not in the interest of the party?
Everything they do in the National Assembly should be in the nation, not in interest of the party. But it is the process of developing our democracy. You know, in every National Assembly, everywhere in the world, they have these arguments, and they usually go on party lines. But you must not do it to an extreme. There are times when you could go on party lines and it's not too destructive. This issue of proper voting, proper tabulation, getting proper legitimate results should not be along party lines. Nobody benefits. Nobody in the long run. Nobody benefits.
I think it's more also because the party line talk might just be a facade. It's about their interests above all else. So interests may have superseded some of those things we could refer to as party lines. But speaking about the ward, your party had their ward congress in some states, and then some arguments about parallel congresses and challenges, huge implications if not handled properly. But while talking to us about those parallel congresses, so before you do that, could you also start by letting us know, because I mean, lots of people want to also follow the process and understand why there is so much tussle. Why is the ward very important before you then talk about the questions about the parallel congresses?
Well, the ward is where you have the polling booths. The ward is where you have the voters. The ward that's where you have the election. Everything begins and ends in the ward. It is the ward result they take to the local government, from the local government to the state. Everything comes from the ward. That's why it's so important. And you know the power of the ward chairman now. We've all seen it, what happened to Oshomole. And what happened to our own good man, Secondus. So you understand that everything should begin from the ward. That's where your name is on your ward register. Whoever you are, even if you're the president of the Federal Republic, you must be registered in your ward. And that's where you vote. So the ward is key. It's the foundation.
In other words, if anyone wants to get into the space, they need to understand the importance and the power of starting from the ward. That's like the fundamental basis, isn't it?
And if you respect the word and you build the word, then you build your party. Part of the reasons why we have had problems in Lagos State PDP is because the wards have been neglected too much. for too long. So the word is key, and that is the foundation. As I said, it's like building a building. You want to construct a building, and you didn't lay proper foundation.
Now, why was, because I mean, many would have thought, well, I haven't seen, or at least playing opposition politics now, the party might have said, okay, look, we need to get this right. We cannot afford to miss an opportunity which stares us in the face. And so not many will expect that there will be any such word as parallel congresses holding in different states for these world congresses. So with all of this going on, don't you see that as potential, you know, bananas peel for the party if this is not handled right?
Well, you know, politicians are called here today, gone tomorrow gladiators. They are always fighting. So when you see us at our world congresses, we know that once you get it right in the world, power in the world is very key. So everybody wants to be involved. In the case of the PDP, it's a very rigorous and very vibrant competition. But trust me, we didn't have parallel congresses in Lagos State PDP. There were people who wanted to have parallel, but it went to no avail because the system is very clear. Only the world chairman can tell you the venue for the World Congress. So if a world chairman chooses a venue and announces it at the General Assembly, which we did, then the Congress is going to be held in that ward. So parallel Congress in another ward, or rather in another venue, is null and void. So the officers from National came and they knew where to go. They go to where they know has been announced before now and has been registered and has been the tradition. Go to that location. Whatever is happening there is the election. And they collect the forms from there, the results from there, and they go back to Abuja. So we didn't have, if you want to see parallel Congress, go to APC and see the war. Right now, the party is divided along different groups. We don't have that. Chief Bodejo did not have a World Congress somewhere, and Mrs. Minor, Dr. Gukelu have somewhere else. That didn't happen in PDP.
I saw this coming naturally, and this is something you hear from time to time. But I mean, some reference what played out in Oyo State. In fact, former member of the House of Representatives saying that there were parallels, parallel elections. That is, as it were, Osun State as well. There was division. So those are clear, I mean, divisions and parallel elections in the PDP, which you say does not have that.
No, well, you see, what I mean is this: those parallels cannot stand, because they are illegal, because we have clear guidelines as to how we do our elections. A lot of people who are not happy, for instance, in my own ward, we had something similar. Let me tell you what happened in my ward. I wanted the current ward chairman to return to have a second term in office. Some other leaders in the ward did not want him. They want somebody else. And we had done our, we went through the process of aligning different positions, you know, ward secretary, ward youth leader, ward woman leader, and so on. We had all that. There was nobody challenging anybody. But when it came to the chairman, they said they don't want this chairman. Some people said they're going to run against him. So they were actually meeting in a venue that I had provided. So I told them, I said, okay, we have agreement on everything. We are going to go to Congress for chairman. Even though that's the person I want, since you say you're challenging him and you're not backing down, let's go to the Congress, right? So the chairman now, who has announced the venue of the Congress a week before, a venue where they normally, by the way, the venue for the Congresses in PDP is usually where they have their ward meetings. You understand? So when the day of the Congress came, the ward chairman went to the venue where they normally have meetings, where he has announced already a week before at the assembly of the local government, in front of everybody, the venue is going to be this place. So he went there. So people went there to vote. Now, the parallel happened. Somebody who did not want that chairman went to another venue to hold a parallel Congress.
That takes me to my next point.
So the Congress that he went there, nobody could collect results from him.
Okay, so and that takes me to my next point, like I said. So we had the Southwest Congress, the PDP Congress, which I believe you were a part of as well earlier in the year. And we saw some of the issues that came out. Mr. Olafeso saying that, well, this was not free and fair. It was meant to be secret ballots. We saw people joining tables together, essentially just marring the whole process. So that happened. And you expect that, I mean, lessons will have been learned from that one. Moving, pardon me, just let me land on that question, pardon me. So, I mean, we expect that lessons will have been learned. And this is not just for the PDP alone, but let's just restrict this to the PDP because clearly you're a member of the PDP. So the World Congresses came and we've just seen parallels. And it appears to me as though, you know, the PDP is carrying on as though they're unaware of the climb in the country right now, overheating the politics sort of. I mean, you expect that the political party will set the tone of what they expect to happen in the larger society. I mean, you understand what's happening in the country. So why is it that political parties, the PDP, are carrying on as though they're not aware of the climb we're in right now?
I beg to disagree that we are carrying on as if we're not aware.
So why do we have the parallels and the rancors?
Politicians will always fight over positions. For many years, people would think that in the U.S., oh, they have democracy. You know, now you know with Donald Trump that there can be war and chaos. That is democracy. People can express themselves. The gentleman you referred to at the Southwest Congress lost the election, narrowly, by the way. And then he said his thing was not properly organized. I was there. The day before the Congress, immediately after the Southwest Congress, Ayo Fayoshi announced to the world that this was a great Congress. 2 days after, he came back and said it was not a good Congress. So that is just talk. And that's the reason why. Because that Congress was legal, legitimate, and well organized, and because Fayoshi was just lying about what happened, he said they attacked him, the nose cow on him. He came through, came to the podium, spoke heavily, nicely, cordially, went to his house. He went now and announced something else. So that's the point. People can say anything they want to say. We have vibrant congresses in PDP. The reason why, listen, the reason why individuals, the reason why today there is no challenge as to who is the Southwest chairman of our party is because it was a legitimate Congress. It was fully accepted. That's a different thing from what's happening. If you want to know where there's problem, it is not in the PDP. We are having the normal, rigorous competition that you have. It will be like hell, but at the end of it, that's where you got to see the difference. And the difference is what happened when we concluded our Southwest Congress. In spite of all the challenges, everybody accepted it because it was legally done. The same thing is going to happen to the congresses we had last Saturday.
That having parallel congresses, having, I mean, you saw what happened before the Southwest Congress, the videos that were circulating, certain supporters saying that they were going to harm the other person, talking about coughing and the rest. I mean, are you saying essentially that that's the brand of politics that we should now come to expect and just be comfortable with?
That is politics, my friend. The world over.
That's not politics the world over, Dr.
Everywhere. Everywhere.
Like where,
That is the way it works.
Like where, please?
Like in the United States.
Oh, you have those kind of videos, people promising harm, complaints, parallel elections.
Are they not? Did you not hear people promising to kill the vice president in America?
As parallel elections too.
Yes.
Oh,
everybody. Look, listen. All that you must look at is this. People will complain. It's like saying, I don't agree with what happened here. Good. But you have to go to arbitration. Let us see whether your claim is right. I just told you what happened in my own local government, in my own ward.
Dr. Pierce, the fact that, you know, the laws are clear. The procedures are clear according to what the law says, yet politicians are pushing for litigations. That is one of the things that's made people question the electoral process in its entirety. That's why many people, at the end of the day, do not want to vote. That's why the number of voters continue to decrease over the years, simply because, just as you say, politicians are only waiting not for the votes to count, but for the litigations that will follow. That's the kind of process that I don't think you want us to continue. You spoke earlier that we should follow the law and follow the processes so that we do not have the kind of mishmash elections that we do not want.
Look, let me use the Southwest Congress as an example of the PDP. There were a lot of talk before the Congress. People saying it's not going to be valid, it's not going to be legitimate. People threatening to do this and to do that. But the key thing is what happened on the day. We had the election. There was no litigation after. The complaints were very mild. A lot of it was so childish and simplistic that it couldn't hold ground. The fact that people are complaining does not mean that there's a problem. People will always complain. That's the difference between a Congress where you have people having parallel. I'll just give you an example of what happened in my own ward. The guy that went to the other venue that is not the valid venue, where the ward chairman has chosen, cannot hold ground.
Well, isn't
the
that
fact that it's challenging does not mean that there's a legitimate parallel.
Just one moment, Dr. Pierce. Isn't this the beginning or the foundation of the global or the national challenges that many have ascribed to the PDP? Now, you, of course, are not unaware of the fact that so many people have raised issues. There is a lot of, division, a lot of arguments within the PDP over time, that went as far as the level of the national chairman of the party. Perhaps it's because these little issues that you say are nothing are left unattended to, and then they eventually grow to become
I didn't say they're nothing. But you see, the point is, when people challenge the system, you will now call them back and say, look, what you have done is not acceptable. And they usually fall in line. After our Congress, which was very competitive, we have started to come back together as a Southwest group. So those who are not going to accept something that has been adjudicated to be legal and legitimate, they have a problem. But that is what you have to deal with in democracy. Some people will disagree. The law must be enforced. That's all.
So, Dr. Pierce, just before we go, does that suggest some of the signs we see pointing to possible Southwest producing the PDP chairman?
Well, it appears to be, because don't forget that the Southwest has never produced a national chairman of the PDP. And I think that things are looking good for Southwest to produce the next Southwest
chairman. But looking at the big picture,
chairman.
Just one more thing, looking at that big picture, does the PDP think that if the chairmanship goes to the Southwest, it means that they might zone the presidential candidate to the North? Will Nigerians be happy with that at the end of the day, because you will present your candidates to them?
Look, somebody sent me a message the other day. He said, power must shift to the South. I said, what does that mean? How does power shift in politics, in a democracy? You vote. You vote. So if you cannot win election and you say it must come to you, I don't understand how that can be done, except through by force. So the case
it's a big conversation.
Yes.
So let's not go a little further, because it just might keep going. But we do thank you for your time this morning, Dr. Adetokunbo Pierce. Thank you once again for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we do have some messages, don't we? So we can start. Where do we go now?
Okay, let's begin with Olayinka Shibodu with this one on order of elections in Nigeria, saying, I wish to appeal to INEC to separate the National Assembly elections from the presidential elections. Both elections must hold on different dates. In 2019, so many unqualified National Assembly members won the elections because elections were tied to that of the president. This was why many people who stayed in Abuja were winning elections in faraway Zamfara, Borno, Ekiti, and the rest. In 2023, let everybody who wants to go to the National Assembly go out on the fields to campaign for votes. Same should apply to the state or at the state level, separate assembly elections from governorship elections.
You know, when you started reading that message, the argument between method versus procedure
came up again.
Brendan Ohizu says, INEC has credibility issues, some of which are self-inflicted. For example, prior to the 2019 elections, INEC said it has a central server for results collation. But when it came to the tribunal, INEC seemed to deny having a central server. One can also remember the prof who was recruited by INEC in Akwa Ibom State, who has been convicted for falsifying results. INEC should strive to ensure that outcomes of elections are determined by those who voted, not those who counted the votes. If INEC cannot guarantee this, no matter what device it deploys, can be sabotaged by corrupt INEC officials.
Professor Chris Enayana says, if INEC has the power and discretion to organize elections, Nigerians of goodwill must prevail on International Committee of Nations to preponderate on government in Nigeria to respect the power granted INEC to organize and transmit results the way they see it. Margaret?
And Olabode Ajibala is talking about electronic transmission as well. It says the electronic transmission is a seamless way to proffer solutions to some of the problems we are facing in Nigeria. But our biggest problems lie with our political gladiators who will always want a shortcut when the results don't go as planned. However, if this can be embraced by all the political parties in Nigeria, I strongly believe this will end rigging, killing of innocent citizens, and thereby restore confidence in our electioneering process.
Okay, well, just looking at Muhammad Yunus as well. It was quite interesting. Well, there you go. That is the show today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain.
I'm Kayode Okikule.
Festus Akinboyewa and Muhammad Yunusa, we got your meals as well. Thanks for being a part of the program. I am Akinde. Have a wonderful day.
And I'm Maopo Ogun Yusuf. See you next time.